where people learning things and aware of things that they weren't aware of 10 years ago. And the Thomas Paine's booklet, The Rights of Man, became known as the Koran of Belfast, often referred to as the Koran of Belfast. Now, Belfast and Dublin were very similar. Belfast was a relatively small town compared to Dublin at the time. Dublin was the centre. And just incidentally, by the way, Belfast really came into its own it was like an indirect result of it, after the American Revolution, because what Belfast did was it concentrated on allowable trade that was approved and with the rest of the empire, the dominions, if you like, and because, well, for many reasons, whereas Dublin went into decline because I don't know, it just didn't switch gears as quickly to become more British, if you like. It didn't follow suit on that. Anyway, that's an aside issue. But what grew out of all of that was what had been growing, and what was the most deprived part of the island of Ireland was the middle class. This middle class that had grown up in the 1700s, in the 18th century, which was in a sort of a kind of an uneasy but workable relationship with the old English ancien regime, which I suppose the Irish ascendancy, the old Protestant, and as I said, when we say Protestant, we probably are not using the correct term, Anglican ascendancy, which was, even to this day, there's high church and low church. You can be Presbyterian in England, but the real McCoy is the Anglican Church. Anyway, they felt very deprived, and there was, as well as of course being a merchant class, there was a professional class, a very growing and a very strong professional class: barristers, lawyers, doctors, and they identified with the Americans and the French, because that really was what both of those revolutions were all about. It was about the place in society of the educated professional class, not just artists and so on. And the names that have come down to us from the 1798 revolution are all of those that stripe. They're all professional class. Now, they had few of the baggage of the old Anglican aristocracy, and they were very, very much like the American, I won't say founding fathers, but founding generation. And the leader of them, the one that's most prominent, was Wolfe Tone, who was a barrister, a lawyer. But they understood that if they were going to achieve a similar break with England as the Americans had done, and set up a republic like the American model, that they would have to unite with the Catholics. That couldn't be done without the Catholics. And that was the tricky part, because Ireland had a long and bitter, even at that stage, fight between Catholicism, which was considered European, and Protestantism, which was considered to be English. And the surprising thing is that it played such an important part. Now, I may be misinterpreting all of this, but this is my own personal belief that the reason why the extraordinarily successful Irish nation, Irish state, which was paralleling America, didn't succeed while America did, apart from the fact that it was smaller and it was closer to England and so on and so on. But it also had some advantages too. So, one outweighed the other. But I believe that the thing the rock that it foundered upon was an unwillingness of the Presbyterians, not the Anglicans, but the Presbyterians, to, as a whole, apart from their more educated Wolfe Tones and so on, as a whole, to work together. And I know that probably is not a very popular idea, because it sort of suggests that maybe religious differences is just endemic in Ireland. Well, unfortunately, it is, because of the privileges that were given to being Protestant, even if you were Presbyterian. But what seemed to have happened is that they just couldn't get over that. Now, they had a lot of help, because the English understood the Irish better than the Irish understood themselves. So the divide and conquer was obvious. And again, if you read the conversations that were going back in England, it was like, don't let those two to get together or we'll lose it, guaranteed. If they can. And the extraordinary thing about it was that while the Protestants naturally had the advantage, they did in land ownership and in being MPs, being in Parliament. But they had a lot of equality in the professions and in trade. So if you were fortunate enough to become, or to get some kind of a trade business going, people would buy off you. They didn't discriminate against Catholics, at least not to an extent where you couldn't get over it. As was evident by Daniel O'Connell's family, they came from that era and traded. So there was for whatever reason, there was a lot of very successful Catholic families in Ireland at the time. And certainly in the more remote towns and cities like the West Coast, Limerick, Galway, Sligo, and so on, because there just wasn't very many Protestants down there to start with. So here you had a Catholic middle class which had grown up kind of quietly under the radar throughout that entire century for about 75 years. Remember, 1690 was the Battle of the Boyne and the William stuff. So while it settled in for the 10 years in the latter half of the 1600s, it really kind of started to grow in the 1700s, despite the repression against Catholics and so on. A lot of them did very well. Now, so here you had the possibility of these two forces getting together, and that really scared the English. And because they had such close philosophical and cultural and economic ties with America, and they mirrored the events that were going on in the French Revolution, it wasn't, we get the impression that it was, urchins and cutthroat, very low class people. No, it wasn't. It was a revolution by the middle class, educated, nouveau riche, merchant class against the old aristocracy. Now, so the sort of relationship between the two revolutions, or between what was going on here and what was going on in Ireland, are very interesting. Like, for instance, again, something that nobody pays a lot of attention to, but when Benjamin Franklin was in France, in Paris, he was very involved with the Irish. And when you think about it, it made a lot of sense, because he understood how important the Irish in America were to the revolution. He also understood how harmful a republic, an independent republic in Ireland, would be to the English. So he was very much and helped a lot. And